Anna Butterfield.
I'm Michael Butterfield.
And I'm Anole Song,
our Oscar expert.
Oh, sure.
Megalopolis and The Brutalist. Two films that performed so differently. How are they based on the same source material? And what maybe was even more interesting to me is why are people making films in 2024 based on this old ethical egoist's novels? How much of her philosophy do they really have? Did it contribute to how well or badly they did? And what might that say about our society? We are gonna dig into that today in this video.
Yeah.
Crazy story. It's more or less a normal story, actually.
Stay calm.
A few months ago, Anole and I were talking just after she'd seen The Brutalist for the first time. As she was explaining the plot, I was like, where have I heard this before? And found The Brutalist was based on Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, at least loosely. But what I didn't expect was that it wasn't the only film that had come out based on an Ayn Rand novel that year. Megalopolis also had been based on The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, more or less loosely. Before we get into the concepts of the films, can you tell us about how they did perform?
Well, both of the films performed pretty differently. I'll start with Megalopolis. It came out in 2024, had really negative to slightly mixed reviews from critics and the audience. People just really struggled with understanding kind of like what the point of the film was. That kind of displayed in its box office success. The original film's budget was over $120 million. It was a really big budget film, but in the box office, I think worldwide, it only made about $14 million. It actually received like a Raspberry Award.
Francis Ford Coppola.
Which is equal to the Oscars, except the other direction. So it's always comparing like the worst films and the worst directors and actors in each of these categories that the Academy usually does. And then on the opposite side, The Brutalist, audiences and critics really quite enjoyed the film. It has pretty high reviews. That film was only made for $10 million, which is quite impressive considering it's a 3.5-hour historical drama film. And it made over $40 million in the box office. In terms of, awards and whatnot, it got over 10 Academy Award nominations and won 3 of them.
And the Oscar goes to Adrian Brody.
Totally opposite receptions from everyone.
Starting with Megalopolis, what can you tell us about the plot, the characters for those who haven't seen it?
It all takes place in New Rome, which is like a futuristic Roman Empire. And we're following this main character who's like an architect whose name is Caesar, of course. Caesar Catalina, and he is kind of considered like a genius in this world. He, at the beginning of the film, gets like a Nobel Prize for this invention, for this building material called megalon. And this is kind of where he crafts his concept of a completely new world society that he calls Megalopolis. And so the whole story, we're following him as he's trying to build this new place and convince everyone around him that this is like exactly what they need. But he's directly faced with the mayor of New Rome named Franklin, and he is totally an advocate for like the status quo. He likes how the world is right now. He really kind of thrives off of it. Other people's greed and his own greed, so just like financially speaking. And then we have this third character. Her name is Julia, and she is Franklin, the mayor's daughter. And so at the beginning of the film, she's kind of like well known. She is loved by the people, and she kind of represents like order, if that makes sense. But then as she meets Caesar, she ends up falling in love with him and totally being enamored by his ideas of this future possibility. Near the end of the film, there's like this huge riot that breaks out, and it's utter chaos. And like basically the old world like falls because of how messy everything has gotten. And so he's like, hey, what about my like idea over here that I'm like almost done building? And then he ends up like kind of convincing everyone that like is actually a good idea, because it's like not like their old society even exists anymore. He has successfully finished Megalopolis. It's like everyone is kind of happy about it, I guess. And then it's like we pull out and then the movie ends, and that's like
Wow.
kind of a brief summary of,
Yes.
of the film.
I think I do remember seeing like a funny comment about like the end scene where the baby's on like a flying carpet or something, right?
Yeah,
Or the baby can stop time.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
On its own?
Or like it's like I
I
think
think
it's
on its
like
own.
supposed to be like a family thing, but yeah,
That's just a family thing.
like it's like
Okay.
a callback, but
It's Incredibles.
yeah,
The
exactly.
third Incredibles
Exactly.
movie.
Exactly.
Let's actually watch the opening scene for this film.
Totally.
Time, stop!
That title frame makes me think of Dracula, which doesn't
Oh,
a couple
So when I see like Adam Driver standing on top of a huge building, overlooking kind of humanity, and he has this godlike ability to stop time. The Fountainhead opens with the protagonist, Howard Rourke, I think is his name,
Mm-hmm.
and he's standing on top of this like huge cliff overlooking the ocean. Spark Notes insights here, but they emphasize the sky and the ocean, and it's like they said comparing him with those things is almost like a deification. For Rand, she is like within her novels trying to create like this image of the ideal man. And as an ethical egoist, she kind of maybe takes that kind of ideal in a different direction than someone might traditionally think.
He has to hold the reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness.
Why are those the things? Because like if her characters are similar to Caesar, I hated Caesar and I would like never want to be friends with him. So I'm like, personally,
Within ethics, and especially normative ethics, you're answering several like key questions. You're asking, first of all, like, is morality a real thing? You're asking, like, how do we know what those morals are? And then you're asking a really important question, which would be like, why should I be moral? Like,
Mhm.
personally. So, like, picture a scenario where I, like, do everything right, but I totally suffer for it. And then picture another scenario where I do everything wrong and get away with it. Nobody knows that I'm a terrible person, but I flourish. Like, my life is amazing. Like, I have all the money. I have, everything that I could want. What compels me to choose to do the right thing here?
mm-hmm.
Like, is it even good for me to be moral?
Right.
And I think that in a charitable way, Rand is also like highlighting that. Like, is it good for me to be moral? And if everyone's always asking me to give up what I want for other people or to feel bad for other people, that's how I'm supposed to live. And it's always disadvantaging me. Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to be moral at that point. So, like, in a way, the way that she has advocated for selfishness is a way of salvaging the question of, like, we should be moral, but this is what's moral.
Yeah, that egoistic basis for why be moral. She's saying, I think I can redescribe the moral stuff that matters through this theoretical foundation, self-interest. Now let's talk about why you should be nice at dinner, or why you should work on projects, or why you should have friends, or why you should, be married in this way, but maybe the other, whatever. And she's like, I think I can redescribe all the things that matter that way. In a sense, the most moral person would have embraced that. I'll be moral because being moral, it means being self-interested, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah, let's watch this other scene and see if we have any additional insights.
To create something to inspire people.
People? Oh, when have you ever even cared about people, Catalina?
Here's my plan. A city that people can dream about.
People don't need dreams. They need teachers, sanitation, jobs.
The need is to create something that lives on after a city fair, Mayor. Which is why Megalopolis will be built entirely out of the Megalon, which is imperishable.
The Megalon is unsafe. Concrete, and steel is safe.
Imagine today's society,
Yeah.
a branch of civilization,
They're greedy.
about to reach a dead end. Humanity as an old tree with one misguided branch called civilization. Going nowhere.
The picture, am I seeing it right? Humanity was the
Yeah.
trunk,
Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens, and then we had civilization,
Yeah.
and off
Which
that came.
the only branch that has any words on it. You're like, what about the alternative futures, like alternative multiverse options?
Yeah,
Exactly, what
where's
the
that right now? How universe exclusive is he being
Yeah.
here right now? But it was civilization, and then we have poverty and just
Cruelty. I had
Inequality.
inequality, war, yeah, and Homo sapien. So I'm curious about that because it does feel like it maps on to kind of the be an individual, do your thing, kind of counter to civilizational things go wrong. It's very easy to have these really stark pictures when you're trying to make sense of life or reality at the higher level. You're like, okay, there are good things and bad, and then like that object looks like this, so that object is bad, and it's like, wait, how did maybe objects aren't like that in a certain way, and utilitarianism, or I think her vision of Christianity, and maybe some of the socialist experiences she had these calls for sort of an ethical call, be completely about this sort of the other, maybe completely sacrifice yourself for the state, or maybe what God's calling you to is nothing of interest to your well-being or your growth or whatever, something like that. And that does feel like it's either of those feel like unlivable.
Something that she hates is this idea of like a sacrifice morality.
The world is perishing from an orgy of self-sacrificing.
Which is where her selfishness comes into play as the opposite of that, as a virtuous thing. Like selfishness is good. And she kind of describes that with this really interesting illustration about love. If you're totally selfless and you come to a relationship and you're like, I could care less whether I'm with you. I could care less whether you care about me, but we're going to make this work. Nobody wants a loving relationship like that. That's not even love at all. The kind of relationship we want is one that says, like, I really want you. You benefit me. I benefit you. Like, I'm happier for being with you. And so she's pushing back on that. But she, in the process, is creating these dichotomies. Are these legitimate comparisons?
Right.
So is selfishness and selflessness the only options within the relationship? The only options, like, for love?
Right.
And it's like, well, what about unselfishness? Like, what about, like, I care about my good, but I also care about your good? Like,
Right.
Why isn't that on the table? Okay, we've got to dig into a little bit to Ayn Rand and Megalopolis. Let's dig into the Brutalist.
Yeah. So the Brutalist basically follows 3 decades of this one character, Laszlo Toth. He is a Hungarian Jewish architect who at the beginning of the film, he is escaping a post-war Europe. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he's coming over to America. And there's a lot of kind of excitement and hope for this new life, this new world, developing his career in this new country. And then he has a wife, Erzsébet. There's a little bit of conflict, I think, between them, of this like ambitious artist and the cost that it takes someone to be like ambitious like that. Laszlo's very uncompromising. Our last character is Harrison Lee Van Buren, and he is a very wealthy man. They actually have a very tense first interaction. Harrison's son hires Laszlo because he sees Laszlo's work to redo his father's study. And Laszlo does it, and it's really pretty, but it's totally different than how it was. And Harrison comes home and loses it. And they don't pay him for the work that he just did. And so there's this kind of weird economic issue that now Laszlo's dealing with. Harrison and Laszlo eventually, make amends because he realizes how talented Laszlo is by seeing some of his older work through international newspaper. He basically is like, I want you to come work for me. I want to build this community center for the people, and I want you to design it because you're amazing and blah, 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 blah. 2 hours passed. No, I'm just kidding, but kind of. So he's working on this project, and the people who are giving him permits, the people who are building it, the people who are funding it, they're always like kind of pushing back against this idea. What if we got rid of this? What's it like? What if we got rid? And Laszlo's very uncompromising. This like accident happens to a lot of their materials. And so they have to shut down the whole project because now they have to pay for the people that got injured and all of this materials lost that was supposed to like be for the community center. And so it's like all is lost. He moves to New York City with his wife. The wife is getting sicker, and there's kind of this weird like moment where somehow Harrison gets more money or something, and he offers to have him come back to make it, but he wasn't treated super well, and he's going down this path of like obsession as well, and his wife's like, hello, like we are also still in your life. In the end, he ends up like finishing the community center, but it ends on, it's almost like a sour note of he wasn't compromising in his idea, but like at what point did he compromise like his own morality and his own like choices to make that happen? What happened to the family? Each of them got taken advantage of in different ways, physically, emotionally, financially, and all these things. The journey to get there was really hard and like tested the worth of going through all that for the sake of being like an artist or whatnot.
Let's launch into the first scene then.
Totally.
We can check it out.
It captures like the kind of promise that's made. Now, whether it's a true promise, I don't know, but the sort of the promise that's made in sort of America hopefulness things, that's certainly being communicated there. I thought it did a great job at getting that picture there. And that does seem to connect to maybe a little bit of Rand's sense of like America being in contrast to her socialist background.
That's one thing that is interesting. You alluded to it, but like Rand was an immigrant, came from Russia. That doesn't sound at all like either of the characters in her books. It actually feels almost more like Rand herself, which is fascinating. That does make me wonder if the film is doing something contemporary that Rand wouldn't have been doing, in the sense that she had the anonymity as kind of part of the ethic of her characters. Because she's portraying the ideal man, she wants every person to feel they could become that person, regardless of where they came from.
Interesting.
Right. But we, as a modern audience, maybe connect better with Laszlo because we have sympathy for him. And it makes us appreciate even his resilience in a different way. Because, like, you found Adam's character kind of, Caesar was like annoying.
Yeah, a little bit. Right. Yeah.
But we don't necessarily, we view this character in a sympathetic light. Is that helping move Rand's agenda, or is it actually like
against it?
Kind of working against her? I'm not sure. Maybe the next scene that we will watch will dig into that.
Sure. Yeah.
It is no coincidence that fate brought us together on the eve of my mother's death. I'm good at reading the signs.
Sir, I do not know what the commission entails.
We'll talk about the details at home, but you'll be well compensated. And also, you'll be given a place here on the property to live and work. I think that residing here will allow you the time and the space to conceive of it properly. And your family, should they arrive, they're welcome here too.
That shot that's like talking and then it's like the reverse and there's all the people, it's like he's not really in a position to say no, because otherwise it's awkward. And all these people that he just got introduced to that are in theory also super rich and could give him future work, and now it's like, are you gonna do this really nice offer, by the way, because like it's for the community? And it's like, if you say no, it's like, does that now like ruin your reputation almost?
This community center piece that actually does come up in her Fountainhead as well, where there's the opportunity to build it. And he's like, I will do this as long as you promise that the designs will not be changed at all in the building process. And then, of course, when he returns to check the building site, they've altered the designs while building. And so he and his female counterpart actually go and blow the building up. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
They're like, no, I will not allow an abomination of my work to exist. Like, it's either how I designed it or nothing. And that's viewed very highly. Like, every single time he does that, it's the right thing to do.
There is a scene where they're running out of money and they like pitch lowering the ceilings a little bit because his design is like huge and like really tall. And he like loses it on like the financial manager or whatever and yells at them and is like, you're incompetent, you can't do like blah, blah, blah. But at least for me when I was watching it, it was not in a positive light. It was like, dude, you need to chill. He's compromising his morals now, even though he's not compromising his idea, because now he's kind of turning into this like rude, selfish, my way or the highway, which is more similar to Harrison, which we don't like. And he doesn't like either. So it's like you're actually becoming who you hate more and kind of not what you stand for. And his wife does not tolerate that behavior. Unlike in the book where it's like, they go blow up the building. It's like, she's like, Leslie, what are you doing? Like, if anything, he's like losing some integrity. Yeah. Because he's like now only like hyper,
Sure.
It does seem that to kind of hold this super independent vision of just pursuing what's always filtered through the question of what is to your own self-interest doesn't quite seem to comport with my experience of life. And I don't know if it really would appeal to people. And I don't know if like things like the empathy that we're drawn to in The Brutalist towards his character, like does that run counter to it? I don't know. This is kind of getting back to the film question. Like, why does this movie work or not? Is anybody viewing the movie as in line with her thinking? Probably not a lot of people, because they're not a lot of the audience that like the movie are officially Randian in thought. I don't know. I'd be curious. I don't know. You liked it, no? Yeah, like, and would you have to be to like the movie? Right. And I mean, you're asking the question: is maybe The Brutalist isn't so much really doing Rand's view, even though there's certain, maybe more than superficial, but does it work or whatnot?
So going back to the main thing that we have been trying to kind of parse out here is, are they similar to her in the story? Are they similar to her philosophy? And did that contribute to how they did? And I personally do think, even the more that we've talked about The Brutalist, that it doesn't necessarily feel that it's capturing her main characters or even necessarily some of her emphases and ethics. The way that we are drawn to it is not necessarily the Randian pieces of it. I think Megalopolis is doing that a lot more. And at a meta level, it's doing it in a similar genre, like her tone kind of thing, with it being a fable and her stuff being very, type oriented or something. I don't know that says that the world isn't ready to convert to ethical egoism yet or anything like that. But I do think that it just shows that people are still grappling with something more Randian as opposed to like a more traditional view.
I don't think there's any need to have essays advocating selfishness among human beings. I don't know what your impression has been.
I think it'd be interesting to hear what people watching it think. If there was big things that we missed, big themes from either the book or the movie, and if someone would draw a different conclusion, and if so, why? Yeah, I super appreciate you guys having this conversation, and I feel like it's been a fun journey.
Totally. Yay!
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.